This is the peer-to-peer jam and role model talk. This is a way for our youth to connect and engage in conversations with peers and learn from inspiring women from diverse backgrounds. These women are paving the way for others and inspiring our youth to dream big. Now, the goal of our peer-to-peer jam is to encourage young women to use their voice, build confidence, learn from inspiring leaders, and meet like-minded peers. Today, we have a very special guest. She is our Woman of Inspiration Award recipient for 2019, Kyla Lee. She is Indigenous Leader Award recipient, also in our Woman of Inspiration, Woman Driving Change book. She is so well known across Canada for really being a champion for women, getting women into the legal world. And also, I won't spoil it, Sophia, I'll let you do the full introduction for Kyla, but she is definitely carving a path for lawyers to be seen, heard, and valued. I'm also really excited, Sophia, that you're moderating today. You are our 2017 Woman of Inspiration. You actually came into the fold as our first millennial leader before our Youth Excellence Award did actually come to be. And it's because of you that we have the Youth Excellence. And I'm excited that Olivia will be joining us, and she's our 2021 Woman of Inspiration Youth Excellence Award recipient. So Sophia, I am going to turn the stage over to you and let you do your magic moderating the role model talks today. And followed with that, listeners, you have a special treat as we dive in, and Sophia will moderate the peer-to-peer jam.
All right, so thank you, Monica, for the introduction. Of course, I will now have the opportunity to introduce Kyla Lee. So Kyla Lee is a prominent criminal defense and impaired driving lawyer in Vancouver, BC. She is highly regarded in the realm of impaired driving thanks to her unparalleled string of successes in courts and tribunals. Kyla is renowned for her knowledge of the immediate roadside prohibition, and she has appeared at all council levels of court in BC, such as trials in the BC Supreme Court and the Provincial Court, and has been lead counsel in Supreme Court of Canada, which is impressive. Kyla is esteemed for her thorough approach to the defense of her clients, and she is a regular source for major news outlets in British Columbia, appearing in news stories about driving law and criminal law issues. Her blog and podcast are also viewed by many. And after going through that introduction, I think it's understandable that I thought Kyla sounded amazing, and I thought learning from her would be very beneficial. So I'm excited to ask my questions to Kyla, and if anyone listening has any questions, I recommend you put them down to the comments, or you can reach out to us on social media. So with that, good afternoon, Kyla, and thank you so much for being with me today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. That was a very nice introduction.
Yeah, it really worked because I wanted to make sure I could fit everything in without boring everybody with just a super long bio. So I'm glad I got everything pretty well done. And to just start off with a very simple question, just to learn a little bit about you and let you talk a bit about yourself, is what is your journey and how long has it taken you to get all the knowledge you needed to get where you currently are?
Well, I would say I probably don't have all the knowledge I need. And I feel like learning and developing my knowledge is going to be a lifelong journey, but I'm up to the task. I'm 35 now, so I guess it took me 35 years to get where I am. My mom says that I was basically like born a lawyer. She says I came out of the womb a lawyer, and it was clear from a very young age that was the only career for me. My grandmother used to tell this story, and it was like one of her favorite stories, that when I was around 8 or 9, we were walking together back from church, and I looked up at her and I said, "Grandy, when I grow up, I'm going to be a lawyer." And she would, "Oh, that's nice," thinking this was just another thing that children say. I'm going to be a ballerina, I'm going to be a firefighter, I'm going to be a lawyer. But no, my mind was made up, and I became a lawyer. So basically every decision I made was sort of working towards that. I did have some struggles along the way. Things like, I struggled with mental health issues. It was very difficult for me when I moved to university. I found it very hard to like find a peer group and find people that I could relate to. I worked all through university, so I paid most of my own way through work. I got loans for law school, but I graduated from my undergrad without debt. And then the struggle of writing the bar and everything, and the articling process. But yeah, here I am.
Yeah, that's a very impressive story. And it's impressive that you're able to get out of being a lawyer without too much debt, because I've heard that it's pretty expensive. And it makes a lot of sense that you're still learning and you're still obviously developing knowledge, but you've gained a ton, and it's amazing that you made it to the Supreme Court. That's very impressive. And because you did mention that from a very young age you were interested in being a lawyer, why have you always wanted to become a lawyer or a founder?
I think there's two reasons. The first reason is I really like to argue. Like, I'm the most argumentative person you will meet. It's like my hobby. So a job that I got paid to do the thing that I'm naturally inclined to do, I was always just very attractive to me. And just up until basically right up until the Zoom started, I was like working on writing an argument. And as soon as we're done, I'm going to go back to writing an argument, because that's what I like to do. And the other reason was because of Nancy Drew. And I know that sounds crazy, but when I was a kid, I read every single Nancy Drew book, like all of the ones that were published up until that point. And of course, they still churn them out because they're all written by a ghost author. But all the Nancy Drew books, I read them all. And Nancy Drew's dad was a lawyer, and he drove a banana yellow Cadillac that Nancy Drew got to drive. And I was like, I want to be a lawyer. Like, his job sounds cool, and he gets a cool car. Yeah, that's a good job for me. So those are the two reasons.
I personally have never actually read any of the Nancy Drews, but I've heard it's really good. And my mom is a huge fan of Nancy Drew. It's really the first kind of book series that she really got into, besides Anne of Green Gables, which is also another really good one that I've actually read. And it's nice that you found something to truly dedicate yourself to, and just a passionate kind of work that you can dedicate yourself towards. That's really neat. And not a lot of people have found work or jobs like that. So it's very lucky as well. And for my next question, I would really love to know, what would your advice be to youth out there and in this event listening to adventure and be okay with stepping out their comfort zone and doing something fun but different?
Well, I mean, my advice would be do it. It's totally okay to step outside your comfort zone. Even like as a lawyer, I have to step outside my comfort zone all the time. I don't like talking on the phone, and that's like 50% of my job. So there's a lot of just challenging myself every day with things that make me uncomfortable, but that have to be done. But stepping out of your comfort zone also gives you the opportunity to explore things that you might not realize you really enjoy. When I started looking at a career in law, at first, I hadn't really thought through like what that actually looks like on a day-to-day basis. But as I learned more about it, I thought, oh, I want to work as an Indigenous lawyer. I want to deal with like land claims and treaty rights and all that type of stuff. And that I got my undergraduate degree in First Nation studies because that was going to be related to what I wanted to do as a lawyer. I thought it would help me. And as I learned more about it, I found that it was really not what I was actually interested in doing. And so I had to sort of step out of that comfort zone that I built my life around this plan to look at another area. And I always was interested in criminal defense as well, because it's kind of exciting. But specifically, the area that I practice in criminal law relates to driving offenses. So I only deal with cases that involve things that you do wrong in your car. And for me in law school, that was not something that would have been in my comfort zone, because I don't know much about science or cars. And a lot of the stuff I deal with has to do with science. Like, as I said, I'm working on an argument right now that is very technically scientific about how you can test your saliva to determine how much of a drug you have in your bloodstream. And like all the science behind that is part of the argument that I'm making. And so I had to step out of my comfort zone, not just with the area of law that I was interested in, but also things that I'd learned. I remember telling my grade 7 science teacher, like, I'm never going to need any of this because I'm going to be a lawyer. So I'm not going to have to know science. It turns out now I'm the type of lawyer that has to know science. Car accidents, that's all science. It's all physics and math. All the stuff I thought I would never have to do and that is hard for me is now part of my day-to-day life. And so stepping out of your comfort zone can actually allow you the opportunity to be more well-rounded in your education because you don't know where you're going to end up in your future. Even if you're certain what you want to do, you don't necessarily know what that's going to look like at the time you're doing it.
Yeah, hearing you say that using physics and just science and math, and because you're going to become a lawyer, it just made sense from your point of view. Then you wouldn't need to know that kind of stuff. But like school does get a little bit of criticism sometimes about teaching just a bunch of totally random things, but sometimes they do come together and they will go in different fields that you didn't think they'd actually need to be. So that is very insightful. And another question for a little bit of advice you can share for the listeners is, what's some information that is outside, of course, just the school information that you didn't think you need to know to be a lawyer? Like, for instance, a mindset. And did this come from an experience that you had, or are there any other interesting experiences that you'd like to share?
I mean, one thing definitely being a lawyer that you have to get really good at is interpersonal skills, because 90% of what you're doing, even when you're making an argument, is interpersonal. You have to look at the reaction of the judge and, try and gauge from what little information they're giving you. And now with masks, it's even harder. Are you persuading them? Do they have questions? Are you talking too quickly? They're struggling to keep up. Are you talking too slowly and they're bored? What is the hook for them? With witnesses, when you're cross-examining, you have to judge their behavior. Is the witness picking at their fingernails because they're nervous or because they're bored? Is the witness overconfident or is the witness compensating? And so, like, learning to read other people and that sort of interpersonal thing, they don't teach you that in school. Like, the best you get is maybe like if someone looks up and to the left, they're lying, which I don't think, is this the left? Yes. It might not show up the same way on the Zoom. That's not the type of thing that you really use in your practice in dealing with other people. And then when dealing with clients, a lot of client management is determining what your client's needs are, not just legally, where you look at what they need to win their case, but also what their needs are to be in the position to be able to give you what you need to win their case. So getting information out of your clients and how to get that information out of them and how to communicate to them what you need in a way that's going to make sense to them and to keep them happy. All of that involves interpersonal skills, and that's just not something that they really teach in school. Yes, you develop it through your social interactions with other people, but I don't think that we're sort of consciously thinking about how developing our interpersonal skills by hanging out with our friends at school is necessarily going to benefit us in our careers in the long run. And so, paying more attention to other people and how your interactions with them can influence the outcome of those interactions, I think is a skill that you're not going to learn in school, but you are going to learn through school. And will serve you not just if you become a lawyer, but in any career.
Yeah, reading people is something that personally my dad has always found to be something that he's encouraged me to do. He absolutely loves if I can go to an event and present myself and just kind of read off the conversation, how it's going, see what I can just pick out of that. And yeah, reading people is probably part of every single job. I mean, it might be a little bit more important in certain ones, but it's important in all jobs, just so you can maybe make a relationship that helps you in the long run or anything like that. So that's a really good piece of information that you've picked out. And for another question on a little bit of advice you can share is there anything that you have done or changed or found in your life that has helped you gain confidence in yourself, or any little habits that you'll do, or just to get rid of that imposter syndrome, if you've ever experienced it, from developing?
I mean, my imposter syndrome is really weird. I don't feel like I don't belong, but instead I feel very guilty like I feel like I've done something wrong by doing what I normally do. Like I'll do a hearing for somebody and then I'll feel guilty. I'll be like, did I do that wrong? Was I wrong to have done that hearing? Did I make the wrong argument? Like I don't feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but I feel like I've committed some sort of a violation, and I don't know why that is. But it's, for me to get over that, I think, first of all, I mostly just try and ignore it and tell it, shut up, you don't belong here. Not me, the voice that's saying that. I tell it to shut up and that it doesn't belong here. And then, when that's not working, I just reanalyze what I did, analyze the work that I performed, analyze the outcomes that I've achieved in the past, and even the outcome in the case. Even if I'm not successful, there's usually something positive to glean from what happened that demonstrates that I wasn't wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I did the right things, and the outcome is out of my control. And that's kind of like a benefit in being a lawyer, and that the outcome is always kind of out of your control because you're never the decision maker. So I can defer responsibility to other people in my mind sometimes.
Yeah, that would, I can understand where that would come from if like you don't think that you could have done as well as you possibly could have done, if there's just something wrong with that. I can understand where that would definitely come from. And those are some good tricks that you've picked up on, and obviously you'll probably learn some more throughout your career. And for my next question, and for the last question on some advice you can share, is if you were to spend more time building more skills, passion, connection, or grit, which one would you focus on? And when you were younger, which one did you focus on a little bit more?
I think when I was younger, I probably focused too much on skills. I did I learned a lot. I took I think twice the number of high school courses that I needed to take to graduate. So I was mostly focused on skills. And sorry, oh no, you're gone. I was going to try to remember what the options were: skills, passion, something, or grit. I probably would have spent more time on passion. I'm doing stuff that I'm passionate about now, but even though I feel like other things that I could be passionate about, like hobbies or, travel, I didn't have as much of an opportunity for in my life. And I guess one of my maybe regrets is that I rushed into where I am now. I didn't take a year off. I didn't take time off to do anything fun. I worked through school. I worked all summers. I didn't go on, big vacations or anything like that. And I kind of wish now that I experienced more when I was younger. Because now I feel like I'm kind of stuck in this place where I'm continually working instead of taking a break, and I can get out of that. A lot of it is just me. But I think just take some time. Life is a lot longer than you think it is when you're younger. I didn't think I'd ever be 35, and I still don't think I'm ever going to be 40, but it's going to be soon. But I'm going to be 40. And you don't have to rush to it. It'll be there.
It is definitely smart that you decided to focus on a lot of learning. However, I can understand why it would be something to maybe lessen down on a little bit, but I'm glad that you were able to learn so many skills. And switching gears to the second last question that has a little bit more of a fun air to it is, what do you do on the side that we may not know about? And does being a lawyer or a founder help you be able to do that unique thing?
Well, this is kind of embarrassing, but not, because I do it and it's out
Oh,
there.
you're on mute.
Am I good now? One thing that I do is I write music. I write songs and I record them. I get a person to put together the actual instrumentation for it. I sing them, I produce the recordings, and then I film ridiculous music videos to go along with them. And right now I have 5 unreleased songs. I've got 3 that have been released, and yeah, I don't know, it's kind of a fun little hobby. It doesn't really have anything to do with being a lawyer, but being a lawyer and being a founder allows me to do it because I have, the resources that I can put into like pursuing this silly thing. And I don't have to work as hard to have the same things that other people do. Like if you want to record your own music and you know how to play all the instruments, that makes it very easy. But if you don't know how to play all the instruments and you come up with a song idea or a song that you write, being able to hire musicians to actually put your idea down and record it with you and hire a producer to produce the songs, that's something that I think is a privilege that I have because I'm successful in my career, to be able to pursue that passion in a way that other people might not be able to, because it does take, some financial resources. But it also, like, my role as a lawyer has exposed me to all sorts of people, all different types of people. And so I'm making connections with people that actually allow me to meet other individuals who can contribute to these passion projects, which is kind of cool. Like, people I've met through my job end up being people that I'm working with on this fun stuff. And that's neat.
Yeah, this is the reason I like asking this question, because a lot of the time people will have these completely like different hobbies that they'll have that are not really related to what they do professionally. And the fact that they do this is because they have the supports from what they do professionally. And I think that's always an important thing to highlight, because once you have something that you can be working at, then you're able to go into different areas. And I think that's something that people don't always see. So highlighting it is always pretty important. And to now go on to the last question, one that also is fun, I absolutely love asking because I find it rather insightful, is what is a quote or person that really inspires you and why?
Ooh, okay. Well, for a quote, there's a quote that I've always loved ever since I was like in middle school. It's by an author, a poet called Edna St. Vincent Millay, and it's actually a poem. It's called First Fig, and it goes, "My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night, but ah, my foes and oh, my friends, it gives a lovely light." And I think that that's really inspirational because it's, a lot of people think of the idea of burning out as being bad, that if you do something until you burn out on it, whether it's because you've worked it to death or because you've just done so much that you're no longer interested, that's a terrible thing. But it's not always a bad thing. Like, burnout emotionally can be exhausting, but burning out on a topic or an idea can mean that you've explored it fully to its greatest extent. And I kind of like that view of burning out on something. I think that it takes something that's often viewed as negativity and turns it into positivity. So that's probably the quote that I like best.
That is a really great quote or poem. And yeah, whenever you think of burning out, you think of like just absolutely tired and that you're going to like go into retirement and you're just kind of done. But really, yeah, that's a great way of looking at burning out. And it's really inspirational. That's why I love asking this question. Just the amount of inspiring people, but also quotes that I can get from this is amazing. And I think it also shines a little bit of light on what the person that's responding, what their kind of view is set on life or on things are, which is, I think, really interesting. So on that happy note, I would love to say thank you so much for coming today and letting me interview you. And of course, I wish you the best of luck with whatever you do next, and I hope you succeed and enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Monica, do you want to chime in and say anything?
I always have something to say. I just want to say, Kyla, that was an amazing interview. Listening in the green room, I can honestly say that your advice for our youth is very sage. I think it's really important to not sugarcoat that it is a lot of hard work, and that you do have to carve your path. And I mean, you've accomplished so much at 35. I can only imagine what the next 65 years are going to hold for you. I really
go that long.
Well, let's go for 100, Kyla. Let's go for 100. So you have a long journey ahead of you. But I also really love your quote about burnout, because that is one of the topics that we do talk about a lot. And I have actually been subscribing to that lately, but I love how you're turning that around and just saying that means that you've actually explored that topic in completeness and hold it as something of being thorough. and something that is because it resonated. And I don't think we actually get to the point of burnout if it's not because we're so passionate about something. And so when we associate with passion, then it's less of a negative and more of a positive. So I think that's a beautiful quote and a good reminder to sort of reset that. So thank you again for joining us. And again, super, super proud to have you part of the Woman Driving Change book. Super exciting. And Sophia, beautiful job moderating. I always have to commend you. I know that for those that are in the audience today, we even had a, Wi-Fi issue, and you just came back after it. And those are the behind the scenes that nobody actually will notice. And you're moderating so, and you're so articulate, and your questions are so darn good. So I just want to say, yay, great job. Thank you, Kyla. And I'm looking forward to you welcoming our peer-to-peer jam session next, where we jam with peers. So I'll turn the stage over to you, Sophia.
Do you mind pausing? All right, so now we will get into the peer-to-peer jam, and just a real quick overview of the peer-to-peer jam. The peer-to-peer jam is where a bunch of motivated youth can get together and just talk over things, and happily throughout it, I've become rather good acquaintances with most of the people that have joined the peer-to-peer jam. And actually today we have 2 new people joining us. And again, if anyone listening, as I introduce these people or go through the questions, if you have any questions, just put them down to the comments, or you can reach out to us on social media or anywhere else. So with that, the first amazing person to introduce is Olivia. And she's an incredible 14-year-old who is a member of the Banff Alpine Racers and was ranked 3rd in Salome and 7th in the Super G for all females born 2007 across Canada in 2020. She's a ski racer 2021 Woman of Inspiration Youth Excellence Award because of these accomplishments. And for our other person that we have here today is Z, who is a multi-athlete in both skiing and gymnastics, both which she does exceedingly well. And of course, both of them are part of the peer-to-peer jam today, and I'm super happy to have them here. Is there anything else that you two would like to add in for anything else that you have done, or just get into the questions?
I think we can get into the questions.
All right, perfect. That is great. And just for the listeners, this time's peer-to-peer jam topic is innovation. So the first question, just super simple, is what in your view is innovation? And how about Olivia, you can go first.
Innovation to me is not necessarily creating something, because it's very hard to create something that's already being created, but maybe enhancing that topic or enhancing that subject. And if you can increase the knowledge of everybody who is involved, I think that it's an excellent turnout.
Yeah, that's a great view of innovation. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's how a lot of things today are made, is just by putting things together and just seeing what can be used of this new creation. So that makes a lot of sense. And how about you, Z?
I think to me, innovation is just making what you want to make, and it doesn't matter what other people think. It's just you and whatever you think about that.
Yeah, that's a rather good. Yeah, innovation is a really broad subject. For me, actually, to answer this question, I had to go to Google first, actually have an idea of what innovation was first of all, and just draw some inspiration from that. And what I found that was the best description from Google was the action or process of creating a new method, idea, product, and etc. And then from that, I created the description of creating an object or idea that helps you do a thing, because I feel like innovation can still be in the idea stages. It's just really creating something that helps to do something. And I think between all of our kind of descriptions, it's basically the general idea of what innovation is. And to now go into a question that's a little bit more focused on innovation is, what 3 innovations do you think have helped you the most in developing in whatever your passion is? And Z, how about you go first this time?
Um, so sorry, can you repeat the question again? I was listening.
Sorry. Yeah, it's all right. I speak a little quick sometimes. What are some innovations that have helped you in whatever your passion may be?
Something that helped me is I think friends, like my friends have really helped me, because if I'm feeling down, then they help me get back up, and that helps me pursue my passion, I think. So yeah, just friendship.
Yeah, are there any
Yeah.
like objects or innovations that, like, for instance, are there any like skis? Because I think skiing was one of your things you do that have helped, or but anything to attach to your skis? I really don't know anything about skiing.
Um, I don't know. Oh yeah, hitting the gates definitely, like in slalom when I get angry. I yell at the gates sometimes. That definitely helps. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that is a innovation, so that makes a lot of sense. And how about you, Olivia? What's an innovation that's helped you in your passion?
An innovation that's helped me in my passion has, like you said, have to be the ski gates, the ski technology, and the timing system, because without that, we really wouldn't know where we would rank.
That makes a lot. Yeah, you would need to actually have an ability to see who's winning and how well you're doing. So that's a good innovation that's been created. For me, because I'm not in anything athletic and I don't necessarily like gym, is for my passion, which is just creating things and seeing how far I can go with them and just spreading the message of really helping others get into creating things, is I think social media is the first one. Even though there are obviously some social media platforms that I will avoid, I find that social media platforms like LinkedIn, for instance, and even Facebook and Instagram just have helped me spread my ideas and find other like-minded people. And also another innovation that has been really helpful is any search engine like Safari or Google, just because they are very insightful and there's so much knowledge that is packed into them that you're able to basically learn about anything. And also, I think the innovations that I've created have helped me immensely, because it's allowed me to then go and grow in different areas and also develop my skills in business. So I think those are mainly the three innovations that have helped me. And for another question that's rather broad, is what are some of the best and most impactful innovations that have been created? It's not just in what you're in, but just overall. And Olivia, I guess you can go first this time.
Okay, so a couple of the greatest innovations that immediately come to my mind has got to be books, and related to that has like a library system, because without a library system, it would just be a mess and we wouldn't know where things are. Another broad innovation that I also think is incredibly helpful has got to be like computers, technology. Like without it, we wouldn't be able to travel to different countries. We wouldn't be able to stay at hotels. We wouldn't be able to do all that stuff.
Yeah, those are really good. I'm glad that you brought up library, because or just books in general, because usually when people talk about innovation, it's more directed towards technology, but books are really before technology, and books are amazing, and I absolutely love the library. I think it's a very commonplace. And how about you, Z? How about what's some impactful innovations that have been created over the course of just all time?
Can we pause real quick?
Yeah.
All right, so Z unfortunately isn't with us anymore, so she wasn't able to answer the best and most impactful innovations that have been created. However, because she isn't able to be here, I can just answer for her. So the answers that I came up with are, I think that the wheel is an absolutely impactful innovation that I believe has had a lot of impact, and it's allowed machines to be created because gears are wheels, and also traveling to be so much easier. And just other innovations have come from just this one simple innovation. Also, I think that the road and the typewriter have been absolutely revolutionary because they have allowed revolutions to happen, because the spread of ideas to actually be able to happen, and also the spread of good and commodities and just development in cities and with connecting with people and places. So I think that those three are really impactful. And for my last question on innovation is, what innovations do you think should be brought back? And what innovations are you excited to see grow and lead in the future? And Olivia, you can go first.
Innovations, I believe, that should come back have got to be the incredibly cute little golden spindly clockworks, meaning like not quite the grandfather clock era, but if you take it down to their skeleton and you can see all the little cogs working to tell you the time, to me, not only is it fascinating, but
It's an antique place, and it was small and dainty, but it worked better than every other clock or like watch that I've had before, and it was older than all of them, and it was absolutely amazing. So I agree with you on that, absolutely. And they are really pretty. For me, just one, because before I went on to the peer-to-peer jam and Romal talks, I was looking over the news and I went a little further back and I saw that the US was having some trouble with some of their water pipelines. And I looked at this and it just made me think that aqueducts were made in the 1st century and that transported clean water. And that was like thousands of years ago. But anyway, I do genuinely seriously think that clean water should be taken a little bit more seriously, but also I think that steam powered things should be taken more seriously, like for instance, the steam engine train and all those things. I think bringing steam powered kind of innovations back, or at least seeing where you can implement that, would be a green way of doing things that would work. So that's a cool thing that I think about. Also, for an innovation that's up and coming that I think is interesting is something called blockchain. And I know it's gotten a little bit of backlash because it's so tied into with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. But I think that blockchain is really interesting. And the little bit that I've learned from it is how it can store data and all of that. I think it's really inspiring and impactful and amazing. So I'm excited to see where that can go. Yeah, and so to now go, do you have any comments on that, by the way? Just because I realized that I talked a little bit.
oh no, I think the whole data storing thing is really important. With our education becoming more online reliant, we have to really update the software in order to keep up with it. So what you said was completely valid and absolutely what I believe as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that, blockchain is really neat, and there's a program I'm part of called the TKS Society, and I've learned a little bit of blockchain. There's so much to learn about, but I think so far what I've heard is it's impactful and it's interesting. So anyway, going off of innovation and into the last question, and this one has a little bit more of a fun air to it, and I absolutely love asking this question, is what's a new quote or person that you find inspiring? And Olivia, I'll let you go first.
A new person or a new quote that I find inspiring has got to be one said by Michaela Schifrin. She is she's one of the top US American skiers. And it has got to be that train like you don't deserve to win. And that really hits hard with me because, you look at the kids who think they've got it all, but the moment they start believing that, you start to notice that they don't perform as well as they did because they think they already have reached their peak and they don't need to work for it. Whereas others are doing the same thing. It might not be at the same time as them. It might be at a slower pace, but they will eventually overtake them.
Yeah, that is a really good quote. Once you start believing that you can't get better, that you don't need to keep working at something, you do start losing skills. And a quote that I really like that kind of intercepts with that is that anything that you don't practice gets moldy. And I think that's pretty valid. I think it's rather smart. And there are, of course, some people that will say, well, sometimes skills are like riding a bike, and that's absolutely true. but it's also good to try and keep your skills with you as long as you possibly can. So I agree with that quote 100%. For a quote that I have, other than the one I just said, is I think the quote, "You can be alone but not lonely," is a really good quote. And I resonate with it a lot because I go to the park quite often. I'll go swinging and I'm alone, but I don't feel the sensation of loneliness per se. So, and just like any other time, because I'm a little bit more of an introvert, and when I'm alone, I don't have the feeling of loneliness. So I think that's a really good quote. And for a person, I decided to go with Marie Curie because I think she's absolutely amazing. And she won 2 Nobel Prizes, one in chemistry and then one in physics. And she did this because she discovered radioactivity. And I just think that her pioneering work and her dedication to her work and how smart and driven she was, I think that Marie Curie is super impactful and amazing, and I loved learning about her. And I even got a book just all about her. It was a biography on her, and I think she's amazing. So I recommend you search her up if you haven't heard her before. And yeah, I think she's absolutely amazing. And yeah, that concludes my answer. Do you have anything to comment on that, Olivia?
No, I think it's very important. And I love reading autobiographies. It's not one of the main things that I read, but to the side, I just find it so fascinating that, just looking into other people's lives, because you don't know how to live like that, because you never have. I just find it incredibly fascinating, and I could read books like those for days.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love reading about different people. I think that stories, I mean, fictional stories are really good, but fictional stories always have kind of the same framework as real stories. And the real stories are actually things that have happened. So it's a lot more like interesting and groundbreaking, I find. And Monica, do you want to chime in and comment on anything or add anything?
Well, I just want to say that it's always really interesting sitting in the green room, listening to these conversations when we talk about innovation. And really, I love the peer-to-peer jam because it gets a conversation going just on a deeper level. We talk about innovation. We talk about how the impact of certain things it just forces us to think about things. And Olivia, you were saying books. I really love the fact that you guys are talking about books instead of technology all the time. I mean, because we've got so focused on technology, when we were talking about innovation, the first thing that comes to your mind is about books. Like, that is purely beautiful. And as I'm sitting in the background going, yes, books, nothing replaces the look, the feel, even the smell of holding a book in your hand, right? It's truly beautiful. So I was sitting back, kind of just thinking back, to when I was 12. We didn't have technology, and the libraries, yes, they were very, very well organized. And when you had said that, that innovation is the library in the system that they had, because if they were not organized, it would be mayhem. And so I was thinking back to when I was 12, kind of going, and I always had problems finding books, even though it was so organized. I still had a problem finding them, but imagine if it wasn't organized. Anyways, it's always such a brilliant conversation that sparks knowledge and forces us to learn and think about things in a different way. And that's what I really love about all of the conversations for the peer-to-peer jam. And of course, the role models, learning from women who have paved the road, are willing to share their career paths. There's so much knowledge sharing in there. And I really do truly believe that's how we're going to move the needle. And it's with all of you. It's with our youth, because you are future leaders. And I'm so proud that you're on this journey with us. So great job, everyone. And good job, Sophia, again. And we look forward to the next peer-to-peer jam and role model talk.
Awesome.
Yeah, and 100% agree with the whole book idea. And I truly believe that books are an amazing innovation. And without them, tons of other innovations wouldn't have been able to happen because you wouldn't have access to the information. So yes, libraries and books are so, so crucial.
And I did forget to mention, Sophia, I do want to do a shout out because you're on page 274. Right here.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it is
also in
a
the book. Yeah.
stellar picture. Sophia, you are in the books. Olivia, I hope you're in the next one. But I mean, that's a part of history, you know, and I don't think we talk enough about that. How to ensure that we have more Canadian authors, and you know, the works, and sharing these experiences is so important to, you know, to feed the minds of others and share the leadership wisdom. So anyways, super proud about that project, and thanks again for a lovely peer-to-peer jam role model talk.
I just came from hectic.
So this is a special behind the scenes. This is when I like to have the opportunity, just a little one-on-one with Sophia. Super proud again of having you actually moderate the peer-to-peer jam and role model talk. I still remember, and I tell this story over and over again, how there was an 8-year-old that applied for the Woman of Inspiration Awards. And that, of course, is you. We did not have a Youth Excellence Award yet. And it was because of you, Sophia, that we actually changed. They said, well, what did you do? And I said, well, we let her apply, of course. And we got rid of, you know, we just backspaced up to the age of 34, not 16 to 34, because of course we don't want to ever have age as a barrier for somebody not to be able to participate. And so I always tell that story, Sophia, and I think I probably told that story about 8 times today in any of the meetings when I was talking about Women of Inspiration Awards. But I think that's really important to talk about removing age as a barrier. And so my question for you, Sophia, now that you've been, you know, are you 13 yet? You're 13.
Yeah, I'm 13.
You had your 13th birthday. It's gone by very fast, to be honest with you. But at 13, now you're moderating our peer-to-peer jam and role model talks, and you're learning and developing so many more skills in moderating and leading panels. And those are opportunities that aren't presented to all 13-year-olds. So how does that feel? Like, I mean, we've been doing this just over a year now. So I really love to hear from you about your experience and if confidence building, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely 100%. 13-year-olds now and in the past haven't always had these opportunities, and I'm really thankful that I've had these opportunities. A quote that I like to say is, innovation doesn't discriminate, and I truly believe that, except society and the world doesn't always let that happen. But truly, a 3-year-old can be building with Lego. They are innovating. And to answer your question on how it feels to be moderating a panel and just for so long, I've found that it's helped me go into things that I haven't ever done before, like interviewing mayoral candidates and building those kind of connections. I am a lot more confident doing that now than I would have been before the peer-to-peer jam role model talks, because I have the opportunity every month to actually be interviewing somebody and moderating. And it's longer and it involves a little bit more brain power. And then when I can do something like just a simple interview, it's a lot less intimidating. So I think it's been confidence building, but also opportunity opening, possibly, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I have to say that I have been, you know, watching you grow over the years and really utilize all of your skills. I actually remember, and we want to talk about social media for a minute, because there's such an opportunity for you to carve your path and your voice, moderating panels, getting the visibility, the practice, and then being able to share your message on a much larger global stage is pretty incredible for a young leader. And the growth opportunities. But I remember how you were even using your voice actually on the way to school. Do you remember that? And you would do your LinkedIn post or your Twitter feed. You said, don't tell anybody, but I only spend about 30 minutes a day on it. And I'm like, I laughed so hard because, you know, that's all it does take sometimes, is that 30 minutes of focused concentration where you get your message out there. And that's a great message to share. But I thought, how brilliant was that? You're like, it makes you were sharing this big secret that you only really spend 30 minutes a day, and that's on the drive in the back seat while your parents are taking you to school in the morning. And I thought that was so brilliant. Do you still spend only 30 minutes a day is what I want to know, or do you spend more time crafting your message and your story on social media?
Well, it's a little bit more different because now I have themes that I like to go across. I mean, I did have themes that I would go with, except there were a few less that I would have. So I like making the post is still about 15 minutes. And like I'll put people in, I'll put hashtags and everything. And I have the hashtags somewhere in a Google Doc, so it doesn't take that much time. Just so it's like super simple. It's just the people that I have to put on. So making the actual post, I'd say it's still about 15 minutes. And then I just need to make sure it's the same across all of my social media platforms. So that's also a little different. I used to only use Twitter and LinkedIn. Now I use Instagram and Facebook as well. I love LinkedIn, super big fan of LinkedIn, and I've enjoyed Instagram as well. It's not a big following that I have right now, but I've enjoyed the vibe I've gotten from it. But yeah, I still spend the 15 minutes a day making the post, and then I'll make sure it's on all my social media platforms. And I think it's smart of me when I was younger to realize that it only took that amount of time. Like I'd be driving into school and I'd be in the back seat and I would make this post, and I would make sure I made the post, and then I would retweet, I think it was 3 posts that I liked on like a hashtag that I really liked, and then I'd like a few posts. So I think it was like 3 retweets and 5 likes, just to make sure I memorized that. And it worked, and it made sure that I was out there and that people could recognize me and see me as somebody that was on the platform and doing something.
Well, you certainly have been very active on the platforms, and I have to say that there's not too many young ladies and leaders that have their LinkedIn profiles. And that's one thing that we really encourage our young leaders is to start developing that your voice. And I know that I think all of our youth ambassadors, our Youth Excellence Award recipients, all are now on LinkedIn, just because they see how powerful that platform is to share their message. So do you remember how old you were when you first got your LinkedIn profile made? This is just to sort of help everybody that hasn't got on LinkedIn, to give them a little motivation that they should probably start getting their LinkedIn together, because it's so powerful. So do you remember how old you were?
I think I genuinely don't remember too much. I remember liking Twitter when I was younger a little bit more, so I have a little bit more of a memory of that. But I think it was around the same time that I got Twitter that I got LinkedIn, so like 8, 9-ish. But it is something that you can get on at any time, truly. There are like the youth that I talk with in TKS, that whole organization that I'm part of with many other motivated youth, and then just everyone that I meet day to day. Like there's still some people, adults and youth, that don't have LinkedIn still. And once you get introduced to it, and I always try and push you to have a LinkedIn profile, like even if you're not looking for a job, it's great just for the environment and everything you can learn on there, and just the like-minded people you can find on there. So I recommend whatever age you are, get on LinkedIn and just see what you can do with it. Maybe make a few posts, retweet a few things, and just try and develop a rhythm of some sort. And it's amazing. I love LinkedIn.
Well, thank you for that. And I think LinkedIn should thank you for that as well, because that's a great advertisement. And no, we're not sponsored.
No.
But I really do agree with you 100%. Develop that leadership voice and start it young and be consistent with it. So my next question for you is, I know that you have a very busy schedule, and I know that one of the hot topics for us to always talk about is the work-life balance. And so, I want to sort of talk to you about, you've got school, you've got your extracurricular activities, the TKS. I know that you do the monthly peer-to-peer jam role model talks, as well as contribute for the UWN magazine quarterly. So you've got your hands on a lot of cookie jars. So how do you sort of go through a process? Do you have a process that you follow? How do you make sure that you don't get overwhelmed with everything, or that you stay organized?
That is a great question. To be honest, it's not perfect yet, but I mean, I kind of have a sort of system. Right now, what I've mostly been doing is 1 week is more dedicated to things other than right now I'm working on a project called Key Angels, and I've been reaching out to Service Credit Union. I've been reaching out to MLAs in my area, all government kind of people, just to figure out what's around, help me. And also actually, I'm not going to say any companies, but I'm reaching out to companies to see how I can partner with them so that I'm able to get properties for this idea. And I'm not going to go full monologue about it, but you can go to key-angels.com to learn about it. But anyways, that has taken a lot of my time right now. So 1 week I'll do things other than Key Angels, and then the other week I will. And obviously on the Key Angel week, I'll still do some stuff, but it's a little bit more dedicated to Key Angels, and I'll put meetings on there, which I find take a little bit more of my energy. And then on the weekends, I like to focus on TKS. And that's because Saturdays is usually when they do hackathons, or if they just have a regular session. Right now, it's a little bit more hackathon motivated though, and challenges. And I'll do videos and I'll do a focus. They try and get you to go into cool areas that you might find interesting. And yeah, I'll just do posts and I'll do LinkedIn stuff on that week a little bit more. So it's kind of what I have going right now, but I'm also online school, so I also have that flexibility. I was in person for a little while. Really in person, I was only able to do posts while I was at school, and articles as well, because I can write. But I'm a lot happier now that I'm online. I'm able to get more done. But yeah, that's kind of what my schedule-ish kind of thing is.
Great. And so I guess my next question is, what do you do for fun?
Well, I find everything that I do right now is fun. And even if it's a little bit of stress before you start doing it, I find it fun. I feel that motivation or like that completeness from it, and I find it really entertaining and interesting to do. And the fact that I am coming up with these ideas and I'm maybe actually able to implement them on a fuller, broader scale is a lot of fun, even if it is a little stressful. But I have amazing contacts that have been so helpful and are really wanting to help me, so they help me, and that's really helpful. But for things other than just everything you basically just said, I really enjoy going to the park. I'll usually do it later at night, just so there's nobody there, and I'll just listen to music as I'm swinging. And I also enjoy art, and I enjoy drawing, and I've gotten fairly okay at it. I've sold a few pieces, and I mean, it's not like a full-time, like always doing it, but I'll do it a few times, and I just kind of have fun with it, and I really enjoy that. And older time movies like Murder, She Wrote, or I don't know, other movies like that. Right now it's Murder, She Wrote that I'm really watching with Jessica Fletcher or Angela Lansbury, and I love Murder, She Wrote. But yeah, that's kind of the fun stuff that I'll do. Also bug my brother.
I'm sure he's really happy with that, Sophia. And
Yes.
I think you forgot about Greg.
Oh, yes. I also have a dog, so I'll also take him out. And at the same time that I'm not bugging my brother, I'll hang out with him. And he's very food motivated, so I'll toss just a little bit of his like regular food. He'll just run after it, and that's really fun to do. And also just hang out with family and cook meals. Like I made pad thai yesterday for dinner, and that was really nice. And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Put a little bit too much peanut butter, but it was still pretty good.
Very cool. Well, all of these great big things that you're learning and all of these interests, it's exciting to see that path go. I would really love, to see the peer-to-peer jam and role model talk really expand. So what do you think the value is that we can really make as an impact when we reach, interviewing our role models for one? How important is that for our youth? And I interview all the time, Sophia, but you put a different spin on it. Your questions are different because they're coming from a curious point of a youth leader, right? Not as a peer learning about someone and already kind of knowing a little bit about the journey. You come at it from a different perspective, which I think is really important, because you're asking the questions that most youth want to know from our role models. So maybe talk a little bit about the importance of that to help raise the bar for leaders, future leaders.
Yeah, it is a really difficult thing sometimes, mostly when I'm interviewing, and what I want to get out of an interview or from somebody is what helped them get where they are now. And that could literally be anything. Like, there's this one person I've entered that I've heard about and met once, and she's in the fashion industry and she has this clothing business. But what helped her get there is that she's in real estate. So she was buying properties, and that's how she got this one property without going bankrupt, because the fashion industry is a very, very competitive field. So that's how she's in it. So I like to have that, like, what actually did you do to get where you are? And that's something that's a little difficult to get out of people sometimes. And it's something that does take a little bit more thought. But I think the actual process of how did you get here, and not just all those slogans like I worked hard and I was super motivated. What did you do? What were the steps that allowed you to get where you are now?
And what have you learned so far? Is it a straight road or is it kind of zigzag?
Very zigzag. Like, we were talking with Kyla just now, and she was talking about how she was going into treaty rights and like land rights and all that kind of stuff in the field of law. And then she found that she really wasn't interested in it, and it wasn't really her passion. So she moved, and then she went into going into the criminal lawyer and like impaired driving kind of area. And also because of this, she's able to go and play a little bit with music, which she enjoys and has fun with. So like all of that, like you're able to go into passions that you like from a passion that you worked hard at, and this started from somewhere that allowed you to have tons of opportunity, which was in the legal field. Like just that entire like pathway that not really everybody lets loose of and talks about is so important for us youth, so that we know how to actually get where we want to go and have a good life.
And most importantly, try it out.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel good, try something else is really important, and don't be afraid of trying something new. I think, when I sit back into the green room and I'm listening to all of these interviews, I mean, I've interviewed them, so I kind of know their story, but I'm always really inspired when they tell the same story about the same path that's kind of zigzag, because I think that's the real story that's coming out, and that is what is very helpful. My next question is about the peer-to-peer component of our peer-to-peer jams, where we have you interviewing peers on questions. And I, again, sit in the green room and I'm listening to the conversations, and I'm just blown away by the thought and intention in your answers and how much knowledge is shared. So I want to hear from you. How important is it to have those peer-to-peer sessions and those support networks?
I think that it is important because it allows me to be with other youth that are also motivated and making accomplishments. And this is important because I can feel like I have something to compare to, or always have a bar to raise. Like we can raise the bar together with what we're both able to do. And I think that's really important, because it's a little hard to compare yourself to an adult, because they can be doing less than you and you think, oh, wow, like I'm obviously doing great. Then there's an adult that's doing better than what you're doing. And you're like, well, how much better? And it's just harder with adults to really compare yourself towards, besides looking up to them and finding mentoring from them. Having someone that's really a peer that you can work towards something together, or just at least have tips and the same experiences you can share, I think is really important.
Well, what I've observed being in the green room of the peer-to-peer jams that I've watched over the past over a year now is the fact that each of you brings something very unique to the table. Mm-hmm. And not only do you each bring something unique to the table, but your perspectives, because that uniqueness is very different, and there's a lot of honesty, and there's lots of respect for each other that goes on in these conversations. And I think that is really important, for moving forward into building the, the peer-to-peer jams and role model talks is number one, welcoming the opinions of all. What do you think about that?
Well, I do think that having multiple different opinions on something is important. And actually, just in school today, we were talking about just how everything in the world has been. And there are people with numerous different opinions. And especially being in Alberta, you have these different, like definitely on different sides. And it was good. Like we all respected each other. And I was worried that wouldn't happen. So I didn't step in at first. I was like, I don't want to make this worse than it needs to be. But once it was, like, we were just debating and talking and sharing opinions, and we all kind of just had this mutual respect. And I learned a lot as well about different data that I didn't know, or different perspectives that I didn't know about. And this allowed us all to kind of come out of it and have a different view on it, or different respect for another person and what they are thinking, or at least understand why they're thinking that. And this can allow you to come up with ideas that you never really would have had before. And if you don't understand something, you can't do anything about it, and you can't address the actual problem. So yeah, I think multiple opinions is good for learning, but also for creating.
Great answer. One question I did have for you, Sophia, is, when I grew up, I didn't have a lot of role models, and, it just wasn't a thing. It just wasn't a thing. All of the female role models that I had in my world, my mom, my grandmother, all of the strong women that were surrounding me, but they weren't, sharing their career paths and their journeys and all that sort of stuff. And, I look at where we are right now. I mean, we're close to celebrating International Women's Day. Of course, Universal Women's Network, we celebrate it every day, and champion for women. But I would really love your perspective on the equality piece. Do you see a difference out of your lens between men and women? Do you see that as a youth, the difference? Or I'd just be very curious to find out. Do you see that there's a need for equality or equity?
I do believe that women and men are taught different views on how they take compliments, how they do something, really anything. So when growing up, you have a different idea of how you're supposed to act to certain things, which sometimes gives a woman or a man a little bit more of an edge in a certain area. And that can make, like, for instance, teachers, I'm guessing just because of the experience in my school, there's more women teachers than there are men. So I think there's different areas that women and men there's a lot more of them in. So then there's less of an equality, there's less of an actual even match. So I do see that there is an inequality in many different fields, just because of how society and what everyone is taught, or at least they experience. So that's how they kind of mentally perceive of how they should react to something. If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Absolutely. I think the environment that you've grown up in has been very supportive of your, I know your father was like your business coach. He said, kids play sports and there's coaches for sports, but I want to be a coach for business. And, that has served you really well over the years. And so you grew up with thinking, I can do anything that I want, and you've done a lot of really great things. So what are you most proud of accomplishing to this point?
I believe, and this is only because I've said the Aztec Awards before, and just because that was the first award where I really had set it in, and of course the first business meeting, but actually just recently because of Key Angels, I with TKS, I was talking to a person that was an adult in it, and they were kind of like a teacher basically, but they're just above. It's kind of weird in TKS, but it's just someone that was above me and that you could go to for questions. And it was me basically just going over the idea of key angels and seeing what they thought of it and how I was actually helping people get into housing securely and stability. And I was talking with them, and it was a great conversation. And I got to the point where I was like, you know how with the house, you need to have an okay qualifying room. And he was like, what's qualifying room? And just before, I had seen him make a post about buying a new house. So I was like, well, he's bought a house. He must know what qualifying room is. He didn't know a qualifying room. So it was that sudden like, oh my gosh, I know so much about a field. And that was a very empowering moment. And then I was able to teach him what qualifying room was and all about like how he was actually able to get into his house. And I thought that was a very enlightening moment that empowered me or gave me confidence, and also I was helping somebody else that they had this kind of knowledge that they knew actually happened. So I thought that was a very inspirational moment.
Well, I would like to know what that is, and I'm sure our listeners would like to know what that qualifying room is. So do share.
Well, basically, qualifying room very simply is your income times 4 times 5, and then compare this to actually the price of the house to see if you'll be able to actually continue paying off the mortgage. So it helps, same with the credit score, how secure or how much can we actually trust you to actually be able to continue paying off the house. And sometimes people don't have enough qualifying room. They may have a down payment, they may have an okay credit score, they don't have a good qualifying room, so then they're not able to get into a house and have that stability. And what Key Angels wants to do is we're basically matching people to have a good qualifying room with somebody that doesn't, but they have the down payment or the ability to get a down payment, and they have a credit score so that they're able to get a house that we're pushing towards a fourplex or a 4-unit building so that they can rent while they have the roof over their heads. They can make sure that they can keep paying off the mortgage, and then we're able to then help possibly the tenants, then them get into a house. So yeah, anyway.
Very interesting. I know that I would love you to share a little bit more about how you've become so knowledgeable about that duplex situation. You have a really remarkable story that I'd love for you to just share a piece of that. You bought a house when you were, how old?
I think I was 10. Like
10?
I was thinking about it 9, but I actually had it 10. And I got into it because of my own ventures. I had a down payment, and I was like, because my dad's in real estate, and he's diddle-daddled in it for a little while now. He's got a little bit more of a profile in it as he's been getting older. And I saw this and I was like, I have enough money for a down payment. And like, why not? I mean, this is obviously something that when I turn 18, I'll have somewhere to live, and I'll have tenants that will be able to continue paying the rent. So I'll be able to have food, water, and I'll be able to continue having a roof over my head. So I thought that was amazing. I was like, you know what, let's do this. And I went to my grandpa, however, to help with making sure that I would have the qualifying room from him and that I would have his credit score because I'm under 18. I also would have his name on the house. So now when I turn 18, he'll be able to transport that property to my name because I am under 18, and then it'll be under my name. So we ventured together. Basically what I want to do with Key Angels so that I can help others because I did the process. I saw it worked, and I am seeing that now I have the stability and security from it because I'm getting rent money from it, so I can continue doing things that interest me while having and actually helping other people. So I decided to make Key Angels to see if I can help others have the same opportunity.
Beautiful. Love the story, Sophia. Thank you so much for the behind the scenes. I really enjoyed spending a couple minutes, just you and I together, Q&A, touching base on, experience over the past years. And as always, I'm super impressed with everything that you've got on the go and really proud that you're part of the community. And I look forward to growing our youth ambassador program. So thank you so much, Sophia, for having a little chat behind the scenes with me. Is there any final words that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
don't believe so. If you're a young woman out there, I really encourage you to know that innovation doesn't discriminate, and that you can create, and that you too can make something that's interesting, or you can just at least get into the field and learn from other people. The adults around you have their own depth of knowledge. If there's something you're worried about, go to them, see what knowledge they have on it. Like, I was worried about, just through the housing crisis, I was worried about housing. And I saw that I had a house. And that's because I talked with my dad about housing and how that actually is able to happen, and the nitty-gritty details. So find people to talk to adults that you trust, and yeah, find people that you're able to trust that have the depth of knowledge that you want.
And talk to your peers,
And talk to peers, of course.
Dream big and be curious.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, be curious. Yes.
Be curious. And as Hazel said in the interview, it's be independent. Do not be a wallflower. Do you remember that?
Yes. And I thought that was so good. Always be curious. If you have that curiosity, I mean, that's what drives you to actually ask people questions and actually learn. So obviously curiosity is a huge factor in it. And also be independent. That is a very important one. Once you're independent, like the amount of, like, it's a little difficult, but once you have that, like, oh my gosh, I sent the email without any instruction, is very empowering, and it gives you a sense of independence, and it's a wonderful feeling. So independence is also something that you do want to strive for, so that you can go out and do things by yourself and just enjoy a full life.
So Sophia, I do have one more question for you before we close, because I almost think this is going to be like a time capsule that we'll be able to look on this interview and let's just say 5 years. So 5 years from now, where do you want to be? At 18, you got that house now. Where are you going to be in 5 years?
I don't really exactly know, but I have a few kind of inklings of an idea. So I want to be in a house, in the house, and I want to at least be in some sort of university program, because I do think that you do need a degree. Even though universities and colleges are getting backlash, I still want that piece of paper to prove I know what I'm doing, because it's a little harder if you don't meet someone in person. You don't actually know if they know what they're doing, and that piece of paper will help if I can't meet someone in person. And hopefully still growing Key Angels. That is what I really want to be working on right now. But if that doesn't work, or if I decide to pivot a little bit, obviously do that. Super smart. But those are kind of the inklings of ideas, and I do want to be still teaching people or asking questions and interviewing. I have fun with that, and I do want to keep writing. But those are kind of the general ideas of what I want to keep doing.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much again for a great behind the scenes, Sophia. Great job again. And I look forward to our next peer-to-peer jam and role model talk. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.